Hey everybody, John from Bike Fit Advisor. Last time I got really good feedback from when I went through a complete bike fit, kind of start to finish, and explained some of the reasoning and everything. So I thought I'd do a little bit of that today. This is on a mountain bike fit, so it's a little bit different. And this bike fit was a really great example of how a rider's balance on the front end of the bike can be off by just a little bit, and then the tiniest change makes all the difference. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we couldn't have done this without first having good balance through the saddle and through his feet. And so this is really a kind of a testament to starting from the ground and working our way up. Now, this isn't going to be complete start to finish. I'm not going to show you every test I did on the rider or anything like that, just because I want to keep this somewhat streamlined. But just to note that this was a young, very fit, elite level mountain biker and cyclist. And so he did have some flexibility constraints, but nothing that was too dramatic. The main thing that he was struggling with is he felt very front heavy on the bike. He was having some difficulty with almost going over the handlebars too often, and even struggling kind of going uphill as well. And he did say he noticed more pressure on his hands too. Consequently, the saddle was not bad, but it wasn't great. And he just felt like he was missing something from his pedal stroke. He felt like he wasn't quite getting the power he ought to. And when I first watched him pedal, it did look like he was supporting himself a little bit too much with his upper body. But I decided to just go ahead and we would get a first round of data on him and then make some decisions. So the first round of infrared data, where we get some of the body measurements, showed that he had a difference in knee extension right to left of about 5 degrees or so. So his right knee was straightening about 5 degrees more than his left one was. Many of the indications from the body measurements were pointing to the fact that his right hip was a little further back on the saddle than his left, and that these differences were creating some discrepancies in his power right side to left side, as well as some differences in his ankle and hip mechanics to go along with this. When we saw the saddle pressure, it's clear that he's bearing more weight on the right side of his pelvis, and he did confirm that if he was going to get saddle sores, or when he did get saddle sores, they were more likely to happen on the right side than the left. So his right hip being further back on the saddle does coincide with the right knee extending just a little bit more through the pedal stroke. And also his right leg sort of power imbalance does go along with, him bearing more weight on the right side of his pelvis. So just real briefly, this is a quick flyby of what his bike setup kind of looked like. And the biggest thing to note is take a look first at just how his saddle, it's very subtle, but look at how it's just slightly nose down. And we'll kind of tuck that away for later. So as usual, I wanted to kind of start from the ground up. So I started with his cleats, and we checked those, and they really didn't need much adjustment, just a tiny change. And from there, I went to his saddle. And taking a look at his saddle, it became clear that we probably wanted to first level the saddle so that it would provide a stable platform, a stable surface for his pelvis to rest. Because when it's sloped like that, even a small amount, it can, in a lot of circumstances, cause the pelvis to be unstable and want to tip forward. So I went ahead and leveled the saddle a little bit. Actually, I focused less on that and focused more on just bringing the nose up a tiny bit, maybe, even probably a degree or maybe a little bit less even, just a small amount. And at the same time, I lowered his saddle about 4 or 5 millimeters. And the reason I did these two things is, of course, again, we leveled the saddle, provided the stable base, but I lowered the saddle because as we level that saddle, it's going to hopefully force the pelvis to go along with it and to tip back just again, a very small amount. But it tipping back is going to challenge the reach to the pedals just slightly. So I made kind of a concurrent change in saddle height to ease that transition a little bit. Then I decided to go ahead and take another set of data, but this time with the saddle pressure. And this is the video from that. You can kind of see as he pedals. I did note that he kind of looked a little bit better. Something had improved. We hadn't done the measurement yet, so I couldn't tell him exactly what. He did note that he felt a little bit better on the bike, felt like he was sitting back on the saddle slightly. And this was confirmed when we did do the saddle pressure. The saddle, he began to weight a little more posteriorly on the seat. His pelvic motion was a bit more even, right to left. And he did not have any sort of what we call like an oblique motion where he's kind of moving in a diagonal with his pelvis across the saddle. That had minimized just a little bit. The big win here is that we got the left side of his pelvis to engage with the saddle. When the left side engages with the saddle, now it provides a cue to the whole left side of the body to some extent. And because we are providing that platform, now the left side, the left leg, can essentially, we call it, might call it getting in the game a little bit. Now it's going to be a little more apt to do its fair share of the work. But even as he's pedaling, I still felt like it looked like he was still cantilevered a little bit over the bike. And by that I mean I still felt like he was a little bit front heavy on the bike. And he said as much, actually, that he still felt like he had pressure on his hands. And even though we had gotten the left side of the pelvis to engage a little bit, he did note a little bit more point pressure sensation on the right side of his pelvis. So my guess was that even though we had started to even things out, his handlebar position was kind of getting in the way, and it still wasn't allowing the pelvis to be fully stable, sit in a fully stable way on the seat in order to create the balance that we're looking for. And this is where I started to talk to him about how we might need to bring his bar position up just slightly to match essentially the pelvic position that I think his body is kind of trying to lean towards.
Exactly, but even, I think with this new saddle position, I think we should try with one of these spacers underneath here, just to bring you up that little bit. Okay. And my guess, that's my supposition is that as the hands come up, it's going to allow, because I think where we're missing is, we're kind of misfiring, is we're misfiring at the pelvis finding its right angle. I think we're still a little too anterior tilted, and when you're that way, it's better, but when it's that way, again, it's that stable platform. We don't have it to push from. I think if we go just a degree or two back, then it becomes a little more evenly distributed. And we take that, I think, anyway, we can take some of that point pressure away because we're going to go to a slightly wider portion of the pelvis, too. Because as we tip back, the pelvis widens a little bit.
And so that's what we did. We essentially, all I did was we took the stem off. We took one of the spacers, one of the 5mm spacers is all it took, from on top of the stem, and put it underneath to just raise him up a small amount. Had him pedal for a little while to kind of settle in, find his place. And when we took our last round of data, we pretty much got everything we wanted. He had less pressure on his hands. His weight went back on the saddle slightly more. He had more equal weight being borne through both sides of the pelvis as well. And even though the pressure on the right side increased, he lost that sensation of point pressure primarily for two reasons. One is because we continued to engage that left side of the pelvis a little bit more. But furthermore, if you look closely at some of the pelvic movement, and it's hard to see, so we'll zoom in and you can see the black squiggly lines here. He really started to get a nice even movement left to right in a very circular pattern on both sides. So his pelvic movement really normalized, and I'm almost certain that that's a major reason why that point pressure disappeared. So now this cyclist is, as happens to all my cyclists, we send them out, had them ride for a while to see, they're going to further adapt to this posture. I got an update. Things were looking really good even a few days afterwards. So we'll still give him some time. He's off racing this weekend, and we'll kind of know more after he's raced on this at least once or twice. But again, I thought this one was kind of interesting because in the end, a very small change up front kind of solved our problem for us. But again, I think that would have not been the case had we not corrected the lower half of the body first. If we hadn't made sure the feet were locked in, made sure that the pelvis was balanced on the seat. Once we got those things kind of cued in, then it allowed us to then take care of the reach of the bike. If we'd just gone with the reach, I don't think this would have worked. We would have probably ended up with a hybridized position that was kind of doing some good, but we weren't getting all the benefit that we see now. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know any feedback you have down in the comments below. If you have any questions about anything about this fit or others. If you like these kind of videos, I do have some more footage. I might start doing these a little bit more regularly. Let me know about that. And that's about it for now. Check out some of my other videos here, and if you haven't, I'd love it if you'd subscribe. Share this around as you can. That'd be great. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.